What's good, guys? Brett Garamella, the Drone Pilot Pro here, and this video is a complete beginner's guide to the DJI FPV. So if you just got a DJI FPV drone, I'm gonna do my best to get you set up and get out there and start flying. So let's get into it. All right, first things first, what I always like to do is just open up the box and take out all the parts and make sure you have all the parts that were supposed to come. It's very rare that DJI will forget the parts, but I always like to make sure, just put it out on the table and just check it off and make sure they're all there. All right, first thing I do when I get a new drone is I charge all the batteries. So you're gonna wanna charge the drone battery, you're gonna wanna charge the controller, and you're gonna wanna charge, in this case, the goggles as well. So all three of those need to be charged, and make sure you charge them to 100%. You only need to charge one battery for the drone, but if you got the charging hub, you could charge all the batteries together if you wanted to do that. All right, next thing you want to do is download the DJI Fly app, whether you have an Android or an Apple device. If you already have the DJI Fly app, what I found is that sometimes it's kind of glitchy because it's a new app. What I do is I uninstall the DJI Fly app and delete it completely from my phone, and then I reinstall it, and therefore it's up to date and everything is running properly. So I'd recommend that you do that. Next, remove the gimbal cover and then the film that's on the gimbal camera, so nothing happens to the camera when you turn it on. And always have the gimbal cover off when you turn on the drone. When the drone is off, make sure the gimbal cover is on the drone. And this will help maintain the integrity of the gimbal for a really long time. So I always recommend you have that cover on when you don't use it. And if you lose the gimbal cover, don't worry, DJI sells extra gimbal covers on its website. And I'll put a link to the gimbal cover, other accessories, batteries, etc. in the description below to make it easier for you. All right, you're gonna open up this cover right here and put in your micro SD card. Now the DJI FPV can hold a micro SD card up to 256 gigabytes. Now SanDisk Extreme Pro makes great micro SD cards. I'd recommend 128 gigabytes because that'll give you enough record time. If you decided to buy a 256 gigabyte card, keep in mind if you crash your drone or something happens to it and you lose that card, then that card is lost, and if it's a really expensive card, that could be a bummer. So it might be a good idea to carry multiple cards, maybe multiple 128 gigabyte cards rather than one 256 gigabyte card. All right, in the description below is my recommended micro SD cards. I would get at least 64 gigs, but you could get 128 or 256 if you wanted. Just click on the link of the one that you want. Now it might be a good idea to put a micro SD card into your goggles as well. However, the goggles aren't gonna record the video in as good quality as your drone. So the drone's gonna have much better quality than on the goggles. You can look at the footage on the goggles on that micro SD card in your goggles as a backup. In case you crash the drone, you still have the footage. It's not the absolute best footage, but you still have the footage. All right, once everything is charged, you take the battery and put it into the drone like this, and make sure you push all the way in so it's secure. All right, to turn on the battery, you press it once and then you press it again, immediately again, and hold it down for a couple seconds and the battery will turn on. You wanna do the same thing with the remote controller and the goggles battery. All right, you're gonna need the OTG cable, the USB-C end into the goggles, and the USB end goes into a normal data cable. So you need that OTG cable. One end is connected to the goggles, the other end is connected to the cable, and at the other end of the cable, you can connect that into your device. Now, before we activate the drone and get into the DJI Fly app, you have to make sure everything is linked. Now, if you bought the combo, everything is linked together. However, if you crash your drone and get a new drone or use a different controller or something like this, you're gonna have to link them together. So I'm gonna show you how to do that right now. And if you just bought the DJI FPV, you can skip this step and go on to the activation step, which is the next step after this. All right, so to link the goggles, you have to make sure everything is turned on. So the drone is turned on, that battery is turned on, your controller is turned on, and then the goggles are also turned on. On the goggles, you're gonna see this little small red dot. What I would do is take your hex key, or you can take anything that's really small, and you're gonna press down on that red dot. After you press that red dot, you'll hear a beeping noise go on. It will go and it will continue. While this beeping noise is going on, grab your drone, press and hold the battery for at least 5 seconds until you hear that same beeping sound. All right, so after about 30 seconds, the goggles will stop beeping and you'll see a live view inside of the goggles. That means everything is linked and everything's working properly now. Next, you're gonna have to link the aircraft with the remote controller. So first, make sure the goggles are powered on. So make sure the goggles are connected to the battery and it's turned on. Press the drone battery for 5 seconds until you hear the beeping sound. The battery light will kind of go across. It will just keep going sideways across and you know it's ready to be linked. Then you want to press the controller power button for at least 5 seconds until you hear a beeping sound. Then you just gotta wait for up to 30 seconds and everything should be linked. You're all good. All right, so now it's time for activation. So your controller's turned on, your drone's turned on, the goggles are turned on, and the goggles are connected to your device with the OTG cable and a normal data cable. Once you have that, press on the DJI Fly app. Now in the DJI Fly app, you'll see the activate button. Press the activate button, and then it's just self-explanatory. Just continue on through the app to activate your drone. If you've already used a DJI drone before, you can just put in that email and password and just go along with that. But if you're completely new to DJI drones, then you have to create that in the activation process. So just use whatever email and password that you're gonna remember. I would recommend you write that down so you don't lose it. Then when you're done, it's gonna say activation successful, and this will only take a minute or two to complete. Now, one thing that's really important is you get the DJI insurance for your drone. With a lot of things, I don't recommend you get the insurance, but when it comes to drones, especially a drone like this, you're definitely gonna wanna get the insurance, okay? Not only will it give you a peace of mind when you fly, but it will also save you a ton of money if you crash your drone. You can just send it to DJI, then they'll send you back a new drone, and the insurance covers you for 2 accidents within the first year, and then you could renew the insurance for the second year, which covers you up to 1 accident. One very important thing is after activation, you only have 48 hours to buy this insurance. If you buy it after 48 hours, it's a real pain. DJI will make you show proof of this, and you have to fly your drone and send them a video, and it's very complicated. So to make things a lot easier, just buy the insurance within 2 days after you activate. So activate your drone, then buy the insurance, and you're all good. Now, obviously, if you already bought the insurance when you bought the drone, then you don't have to worry about that. You already have the insurance. You can now go on to the next step. Now, one thing I like to do with all drones when I first get them, after I activate my drone and then buy the insurance, turn everything off. The drone, the controller, and the goggles, and then also log out of the DJI Fly app, just exit out of that. And then once everything is turned off, now turn your drone, the controller, and the goggles on and go back into the DJI Fly app. When you go in there, it's a good idea to do this because you could see a firmware update that you need to do. In the main screen of the DJI Fly app, if you need a firmware update, it will say update or firmware update. Just press on that and then wait till it finishes doing a firmware update. Now, before doing your firmware update, make sure everything is fully charged, okay? You don't wanna go below 50% because then it will not complete the firmware update and it also can mess things up. So just to keep everything good, make sure everything is charged when you're doing your activation and your firmware updates. All right, now that our activation and our firmware is all good and our batteries are charged, we're ready to fly. Now, I'd recommend you go in an area with a lot of open space, okay? Don't go close to buildings or trees or obstacles when you're first starting, okay? Once you get really good, you can do that. But just for your first couple of flights, it's good to go into open space just to practice. And especially if you're new to FPV, this is gonna be a good idea because later on this video, I'm gonna show you how to practice with a simulator and then go put those skills into reality. So let's get into this. So go find a safe open space away from people and obstacles. Make sure you have a micro SD card in your drone and in your goggles. And like I said earlier, make sure you take off the gimbal cover before turning on the drone. The gimbal cover always needs to be off before you turn on the drone. All right, the propellers are pretty easy to attach, but if it's your first time, it could be a little challenging. One thing to note is there's 2 types of propellers, just a normal gray propeller and then a gray propeller with a red ring. And what you want to do is match the gray with the gray on the drone and then the red ring with the little red lines on the drone. So the red with the red and the gray with the gray. So what you want to do is just push the propeller down into the drone, and then with your other hand on the motor, just turn the motor or you could just hold the motor and turn the propeller. Both ways work, just make sure it's turned in there. And I always recommend that you make sure all 4 propellers are secure before takeoff. And this is very important, but I'm gonna show you how to start your drone so you'll know if something's wrong with the propellers when you start it. So let's get on to the next step. Also, before takeoff, double check just to make sure your battery is all the way in there and nice and secure. You don't want a loose battery when you're up in the air. Make sure the 4 antennas on the goggles are all the way screwed on and secure as well before you take off. Take out the 2 joysticks on the side and then screw them into the left and the right part of the controller so you have your joysticks there. When you place the drone down for takeoff, one very important safety feature is to make sure the drone is facing away from you. So the rear end or the back of the drone should be closest to you and the front of the drone should be facing away from you. This will also make it easier to fly right away once you take off. So turn on the drone, press the battery once, and you'll see the battery level, but you press it twice and hold it on the second time, and the drone will turn on. You do the same thing with the controller, pressing it once and then pressing it again, holding it, and the controller will turn on. So as of the recording of this video, you can only fly the DJI FPV with the goggles on. Now you can put on the goggles and attach another cable to a device so that the person flying the drone, assume that's you, you're flying the drone, you can see the image in the goggles, and then the other person can look at your phone or tablet and go in the DJI Fly app and also see in the DJI Fly app what you're seeing. So in the DJI Fly app, another person can view it. However, right now you have to use the goggles for flying, so you're gonna wanna have another person with you to keep track of the visual line of sight with the drone. Now maybe by the time you're watching this, DJI will change that so you can fly both with the goggles and just with your phone normally, but we'll just have to wait and see what DJI does. But I'm going to talk about the goggles in a second, but right now let's just talk about taking off and the basic flight features of this drone. So in the back of the controller, you're going to want to put it in normal mode. Normal mode flies up to about 30 miles per hour. If you put it in the middle S mode, that's sport mode, that flies up to about 60 miles an hour. And then full manual mode, that's acro mode, that's just FPV mode. So it's total manual control and you can fly up to about 90 miles per hour. You don't want to do that right away. So in the beginning, stick to normal mode or N mode, because in normal mode, the obstacle avoiding sensors in the front that will help you avoid hitting things, and the drone won't go as fast. So it's a good way to start. Now to start the propellers, press the joysticks down and in at a 45-degree angle simultaneously, and the propellers will start. Once the propellers start, you can see if any of the propellers are loose, they might come off. So just make sure the propellers are fine before you do anything. You don't have to do anything just yet. You can take your thumbs off the controller and just let the propellers turn. Then you're gonna wanna press the left joystick up to make the drone go up in the air. Now this drone has a return to home button. After the drone takes off about 4 or 5 feet, it will record the return to home point. So you're all set to go out and fly, and you can then always press the return to home button and your drone will return to you. So if you've flown DJI drones before in normal mode or N mode, it flies pretty much exactly the same. So on the left joystick, if you press up, the drone will go up in the air. If you press down, it will go down. If you press left, it will pan left. And if you press right, it will pan right. Now onto the right joystick, if you move the control stick to the left, the drone's gonna go left. If you move it right, it's gonna go right. If you move it up, the drone's gonna go forward. And if you move it down, the drone's gonna go backward. So once you're in the air, if you're a complete beginner, take the right joystick and press up. That'll make the drone go forward, and while you're pressing up, you can take the left joystick and either go left or right, and now the drone will turn as you're going forward. These are very basic moves, but the fundamentals are very important, so make sure you practice them if you're a complete beginner so you feel comfortable and you don't have to look at the joysticks and you can just do it intuitively without thinking. So when you're in normal mode, if you want to stop the drone or make the drone hover, you have to press the left button where it's a pause button. Press that button with your left index finger and the drone will hover in place. It's not like a normal DJI drone where you just let go and it hovers, so you have to press that button and the drone will hover. controller. Also, the obstacle avoidance is never perfect, so it will stop if a wall or some big object is there, but sometimes tree branches and very thin or small objects, it may not be perfect, so just be careful of that. Now, if you put it to S or sport mode, I would only do this if you are experienced pilot and are in an open area, because you can fly up to 60 miles per hour, but the front obstacle avoiding sensors are going to be turned off. So not having those obstacle avoiding sensors, you want to make sure that nothing's around you that you can hit, or you're a very experienced pilot and you know what you're doing, okay? Now, one really great feature of sport mode or S mode is this thing that DJI calls cruise control. Much like you're driving a car where you have cruise control in the car and it goes automatically. Well, they put that on the drone, which is pretty cool. So to turn on or enable cruise control mode, press the start stop button with your right index finger. You press it once and the cruise control will turn on. And then when you want to turn it off, you just press this button again and the cruise control will be turned off or disabled. Now, when it's in cruise control, it's going to go at the same constant speed, much like driving a car. You don't have to do anything. If you press the right joystick up while in cruise control, the drone will go much faster. Or if you take the right joystick and press it down, that will decrease the speed. So if you want to increase or decrease the cruise control, you just take your right joystick and either press it up or down. All right, now that we covered the basics of flying, I recommend you use ND filters to make your footage really cinematic and smooth. Now, the ND filters I'm using with the DJI FPV are by Freewell, and Freewell makes really good ND filters at a reasonable price. And the pack that I have is a 4-pack, so you get ND 4, 8, 16, and 32, which basically covers you for most shooting situations. So I put a link to these filters in the description below. Now, if you want to know how to use these ND filters in creative ways, I made a free 30-minute DJI drone training. And in that free training, not only do I show you how to use ND filters like these in creative ways, but I also go into my top 7 secrets for flying DJI drones and answer a ton of questions about drones. So you can watch that free training by clicking on the link below. And now let's get into the rest of the video. All right, so now that we went over the basics of normal flying and sport mode flying, I want to talk about the goggles, because the goggles are really important, and I want to make sure you know everything about the goggles before you go into manual mode. And it's a good thing to know everything about the goggles before flying in normal mode as well, but especially for manual mode. So let's talk about the goggles right now. All right, so the DJI FPV goggles version 2 or V2 has 4 different antennas. Make sure these are all screwed on nice and tight and secure, because this will give you a good feed into your drone and a good signal strength. So you want to make sure they're screwed on properly. All right, now let's look at the buttons and features on the goggles. On the top right side, you can see the red dot. That is going to be your record button. The button next to it in the middle there is the back button. So to go back, you press that. And then that third button right there, that little toggle button, is called the 5D button, and I'll show you what it does in a little bit. So when you're in the goggles, you can use that 5D button, which basically allows you to choose where you want to go. So you can go up, down between the different choices here, the different settings. And then if you want to go back to the previous menu in the settings right here, you just press that middle button, the back button. Or also to go back or forward, you can just use the 5D button and toggle it left or right. So toggling it right makes the menu go forward, and toggling it left makes the menu go backward. All right, so the 5D button, it allows you to scroll through the menu, press the button to confirm. And using the 5D button on the home screen, you can press the button to enter the menu, and you toggle left or right to adjust the screen brightness. You can toggle up or down to adjust the volume. The red record button allows you to take photos or video. So start or stop video or take a photo, so you can just press that. Now if you hold the red button on the goggles, it will switch between photo to video. So if you want to go in video mode, you just hold it. You hold it again and it goes back to photo mode. So to switch between photo and video, just hold the red record button. Okay, so looking at that right side, if you just turn the goggles upside down, looking at the bottom, you can see the audio port, the power port, and the link button. Now we already talked about the link button before. That was that little tiny red dot right there for linking your goggles with your drone and controller. The power port is where you connect the cable to your battery, so the goggles are connected to your battery. The audio port is for headphones, or you want to listen to the audio while you're flying. All right, on the other side of the goggles, you have the USB-C port, which you can connect into your device. So you just need a USB-C and that'll connect into your phone or device. And the micro SD card, like I said, you just put that in and it'll store all your cache videos. Now remember, to connect that USB-C port, you need an OTG cable, which comes with the combo. And then that will connect to the data cable, which will connect to your device. So on the bottom of the controller is an IPD slider, and you could just move this because we all don't have the same vision. Some of us see better than others. So if you just move that slider, it will adjust to your particular vision. One thing I'd recommend when wearing the goggles, if you wear glasses, it might be easier if you just wear contacts. Wearing glasses could change that experience. I don't know because I don't wear glasses or contacts, but if you do, I would recommend wearing contacts. And then make sure you have your contacts in when you're adjusting the IPD slider. DJI may come out with corrective lenses for the V2 goggles, but they're not available at the time of this video. But you should be able to adjust that slider and be good. Now let's take a look at the remote controller. If we look at the top of it, we can see in the middle, that little thing sticking up is for a lanyard. So you can put a little lanyard around your neck so you can let go of the controller and it'll just dangle from your neck. So that's good to have. And then also the C1 button is a customizable button right there. And on the right side, you have your power button. Now when you're flying, make sure the antenna is flipped up. Okay, that little gray little device there attached to the front of the controller is the antenna. So you're gonna wanna flip that up when you're flying to get the best signal strength. All right, so looking at the controller, on the left side, we have our flight mode switch. So that switches between normal mode, sport mode, and manual mode. Like I said before, in normal mode, the obstacle avoiding sensors are on. In sport mode and manual mode, the obstacle avoiding sensors are off. It's basically 30, 60, 90. It's not exactly that, but normal mode flies up to 30 miles an hour, sport mode flies up to 60, and manual mode flies up to 90 miles per hour. It depends on the wind, how you're flying, give or take, but it's relatively close to that. And then next to that is your flight pause, return to home button. And then below that is the gimbal dial. Now the gimbal dial, you just turn to the left or right with your finger and the camera will go up or down. Just nice and easy to adjust that. Now one thing to keep in mind with the gimbal dial, the camera does not go all the way down. So you can't shoot straight down like a normal DJI drone, but it goes down from -50 degrees all the way up to 58 degrees. All right, so if you press that pause button once, the drone will just stop and hover in place. It's kind of like the emergency button, the panic button, whatever you want to call it. The drone will just hover in place, okay? Now to activate the return to home, you press that same return to home pause button, just hold it down for at least 2 seconds, and then the drone will return to home. So you press it once real quick, the drone will stop and hover. And if you press it and hold it for at least 2 seconds, the drone will return to home. I would recommend switching to normal mode when your drone's returning to home because it's safer and easier to maneuver your drone. All right, on this side of the controller, we see the shutter record button, the C2 switch, and the start stop button. The start stop button can be used to turn on and off the cruise control. So by default, when you get the drone, the C2 switch will just make the gimbal go up and down, but we can change that in the DJI Fly app. So if we go into the DJI Fly app, we're gonna click on setting, then select control. Then we're gonna go to remote controller. So you'll see this menu, and in this menu, you can change both your C1 and C2 button. So you can customize them for whatever you want. Personally, I like the gimbal up button. That's one thing I like to have. And you can change it to whatever fits your flying style. All right, if we press the shutter button right here, it starts and stops recording. Now you press the shutter button to either record photo or video, depending on which you're on. If you hold the shutter button down for at least 2 seconds, it will switch between photo and video mode. So once you're in video mode, if you press that same shutter button once, it will start recording video. If you press it again, it will stop recording video. Then you're gonna hold it down for at least 2 seconds. It's gonna go into photo mode. In photo mode, you just press it once and it'll take a photo. All right, now that we've covered all the basics, the fun fundamentals. We know about the controller and the goggles. Now it's time to fly manual mode. Now, before you fly manual mode, I would recommend you use DJI's Flight Simulator to practice. I'm gonna show you how to do that in a second. But if you're an experienced FPV pilot, you probably don't need that. You can just go out there and start flying. So to get into manual mode, you press that 5D button or the toggle button. You're gonna go down to, scroll down to settings and then press that. Go down to control, press that. Then click on remote controller. On the menu on the top, you'll see button customization. And then you're gonna go all the way down and you'll see custom mode. Click on custom mode. And then you just want to scroll up and make sure that's on manual mode, not sport mode. So press manual mode there. Then you're gonna wanna press confirm. All right, so to fly manual mode, you're gonna wanna do a little customization. It'll help you get the most out of flying in manual mode. And if you're an experienced FPV pilot, this will be very simple, but if you're a complete beginner, this might seem a little annoying or kind of weird, but trust me, it's worth it. So in the back of the controller, you're gonna flip up that plastic part, and opening up that cover, you're gonna see F1 and F2. And next to that F1 and F2, there are two small screws, okay? You're gonna want to adjust these screws. So with the DJI FPV combo comes a little hex wrench, or I call it, it's called a hex key. So take that hex key, and with that F1 screw, you're gonna tighten it up. By tightening that screw, the left joystick is not gonna go back to center, okay? It's just gonna not be as spring loaded, so to speak. It's gonna just go down, and that's gonna help give you more control when flying in manual mode. So when you tighten the F1 screw, it increases the resistance of the joystick. But when you tighten the F2 screw, it decreases the resistance of that joystick. You're gonna have to experiment with it, move it back and forth till you get it just the right way you want it, okay? That's your throttle stick that will be fine-tuned for your particular flying style. Now the flight simulator that DJI has is a good way to practice. So you're gonna wanna get on your phone and you have to download a separate app. The name of this app is called DJI Virtual Flight app. So download that app on your phone and you're gonna wanna practice. So I recommend you use DJI's Virtual Flight app before you fly in manual mode if you have no experience flying FPV drones. If you're an experienced pilot, you don't really need to do this, but I'm talking if you're a beginner or you don't have much FPV experience, you're definitely gonna wanna do this before you fly manually because you don't wanna crash your drone. It's better to crash virtually than in real life. So in this app, there's 3 different types of training. You have skills training, free flight, and time trial. So in that first category for skills training, that's for practicing flying with your normal controller in manual mode. And the tutorial in the app will show you what to do. You just have to keep practicing to get good at it. Then if you go into the free flight section, the second section, you can fly in all different environments. So this is a good way, once you've gone through that skills training and you feel confident, now you can practice in different environments that you might see in the real world. This is real helpful because it makes it more realistic and will help build your confidence before you actually fly outside in the real world. And then if you're the type of person that likes speed and drone racing, you can go into the third section called time trial, which is basically a virtual drone racing course. So one way to get really good at the virtual training is to make it as realistic as possible. So you can put on your FPV goggles while you're in the app and you can connect your controller to the goggles and then you can start practicing. And then if you have your drone observer next to you, they can hold the device and connect the device to the goggles and see the DJI Fly app while you're flying virtually. So you can control it with the controller and look at it through the goggles, and then you get a friend or someone to look on and watch your skills. To do this, you obviously have to turn on the remote controller and goggles. Connect your goggles to your device with the USB-C port, okay, that OTG cable with your data cable into your device like we did before. To go to different items on the screen in the virtual flight app, you can use the right joystick and then you can press the start and stop button to select what you want. All right, so once you've practiced for a long time, then you're ready to fly in manual mode. Now, probably the most important button in manual mode is that pause button or the return to home button. When you press that pause button, once the drone will pause. If you hold it down, the drone will return to home. So just keep that in mind in case you panic or something bad happens, to stop the drone and make it hover or to make the drone return to home. I would also adjust the return to home height that's higher than any obstacle near you. So when the drone returns to home, it it doesn't hit anything. Also, when you return your drone to home, switch it to N mode so the obstacle avoiding sensors are on. Now, to cancel out of the return to home button, if you feel like, all right, I know where the drone is, I'm good, I don't want the drone to come home anymore, you can just press that pause return to home button once. All right, so now you're ready to fly manual mode. You wanna hold the left joystick or the throttle stick all the way down. Then you're gonna press the start stop button twice to start the motors. Then you're good to go. You've done all the training, let her rip. Now you may be thinking, oh no, what happens if I crash my drone and I don't know where my drone is? Okay, luckily DJI has thought of this and they have ways to find your drone. Now it's not 100% guaranteed, but it has saved many a drone, and I'm sure it's gonna save many people's drone out there who are flying in manual mode. So if you crash and you don't know where your drone is, this is what you do. So if your drone crashed and you don't know where it is, but you still have a first person view, then you can go into the DJI Fly app. You're gonna wanna click on Profile, then click on Find My Drone. Then try to zoom in on the map to see if you can see your drone. If the battery came out or the drone is not on, then what you're gonna wanna do is go to the DJI Fly app in the upper right-hand corner and click on that. And you're gonna wanna go into your flight log and look at your last flight and try to find the coordinates on the map and see if you can go find it on the map, okay? Go to those coordinates and then start looking for your drone. This is another reason why it's important to have a visual observer with you and to really practice and get good so that you don't crash it. But you know, crashes are sort of inevitable in manual mode, especially flying up to 90 miles per hour. So hopefully this will save your drone and give you peace of mind. All right, so now let's talk about the DJI motion controller, which will make it a lot easier to fly in FPV mode, because all you gotta do is kind of just move it like a joystick left and right and so forth. Now I'm oversimplifying it, so let's get into the details. So like your normal controller, it's always good to charge it up 100% and then also do firmware updates, and you can do both of that through the USB-C connection in the bottom of the controller. To see the battery level on the joystick is you just look at the lights on the top. So you can press that once to look at the lights. And again, like everything else that's DJI, you press it once and then you press it again a second time and hold it that second time and it will turn on. Now that trigger in front is called an accelerator. So I'll use DJI's terminology for this video. It's just a trigger. So as you pull the accelerator, the drone speeds up and goes much faster, and you let it out and it'll slow down. And if you want the drone to stop flying forward, you just release the accelerator all the way. Then near the top, you have 3 buttons, okay? The red button is the lock button. Then right below that is the mode button. And then on the right-hand side, you have the brake. So when you press the lock button, the drone goes up in the air, okay? That's for takeoff. The brake button is just like the pause button on the normal controller. So when you press the brake, the drone will just stop automatically and hover. Just like the normal controller, you hold down the brake button and the drone will return to home. All right, so that mode button, you press it once and it switches between the different modes: normal mode, sport mode, and manual mode. On the left-hand side of the joystick, you have the gimbal tilt slider and the shutter record button. The tilt button just makes the gimbal go up and down, or makes the camera go up and down. So just move it up to go up and down to go down. Very simple. It's kind of like the dial on the controller. The record button, which is that red dot, you press it to record video, to start and stop video, and also to take photos. Now to switch between photo and video mode, you just hold that red button down. So pressing it records video or takes a photo, but when you hold it, it switches between photo and video. So the motion controller is great to have, but you're gonna have to link it up to your drone. So to do that, just like before, hold down the battery until those lights start going across back and forth. And then on the motion controller on the right-hand side, you press the power button and just hold it down until you hear it beeping. And then on the top of the controller, the battery lights will go across in a line, just like the lights on the drone. You know you've linked the controller to the drone when the beeping stops, which usually takes about 10 to 30 seconds. All right, so to begin flying, you're gonna wanna turn on your drone, then turn on your goggles. Now connect your goggles to your mobile device. So to do that, you need that OTG cable. If it asks you for activation or firmware updates, make sure you do that. You want your firmware to be all up to date here. And you just follow the prompts like we did before in the very beginning of this video for firmware updates. So you want to make sure you have a good GPS signal before you start flying. So in the lower right hand corner, you can see that little GPS signal. It says the number 20. You want it to say at least 9 or higher. So once it's 9 or higher, you're good to take off. So to start the motors, press the lock button twice and then press it again holding it down, and then the drone will take off. Like we said before, you hold down the accelerator, the drone will go forward. You can move the joystick up or down. So in your goggles, there'll be a little circle kind of directing you where it's safe to fly. So if you see an indicator up high, you want to move the circle to match it, and then the drone will fly to that point, avoiding any obstacles. You know you can fly forward and start accelerating when that circle matches up and it changes color. So basically the drone will move in the direction that you move the controller. So you move it left or right, it's gonna pan left or right. If you don't wanna move your arm, you can just move your wrist, just turn it left or right, and the drone will pan left and right as well. It's sort of a shortcut. So when you press the accelerator, the drone goes forward, and then you turn the controller, the drone will start turning in that direction. So it's flying forward and making a turn. Now, if you want to turn really fast in a 90-degree or like a 180-degree angle, you're going to have to want to turn your whole body with the controller 180 degrees. So you actually got to turn your whole body. So it might be kind of like a little bit of a workout here. Hold down the brake button and the drone will return to home automatically. You don't have to do anything. That's the great part about it. All right, now we're gonna get into replacing and repairing parts. This is a beginner's guide, so we're not gonna go into super in-depth, but all of the major and kind of necessary repairs and replacements that you'll need to make, we're gonna go over right now. So before you do any replacements or repairs, make sure you have all the necessary parts. You can click the link below. I've included these parts in the description below this video. Now make sure you use your hex key, which comes with the combo. This hex key is really important for making these repairs or replacements. Okay, so to replace the top of the drone, it's called a top shell. The first thing you want to do is take off the gimbal cover. Then you're going to want to get out your hex key and you're going to unscrew these 4 screws in the front of the drone. So you're going to want to take that front piece off, and then you're also going to want to take off these 2 screws on the left side and the right side. So the shell just kind of loosens up and you just pull it off. Now be careful, you don't want to damage anything. So when you're doing all these replacements, make sure you take extra care. So then we put this funky lemon color on the top. Make sure you hold it wide because it snaps in there, and then just put it in there nice and snug. Then you're gonna tighten the screws on the left side and the right side, 2 for each side. Then you're gonna put in the front frame and use the hex key to screw in the 4 screws. All right, next we're gonna replace the gimbal. So to change the front gimbal, you have to take off that front piece and the top shell. That's the first thing you wanna do. So you gotta unscrew that front piece again, those 4 screws, pull that front part off, and you're gonna see the gimbal right here. We gotta loosen these other screws right here. So there's 4 screws around the gimbal right here. We wanna loosen those up, take those off. And then we're gonna use our hex key to loosen these silver screws right here and lift this little thin metal piece off, this silver metal piece off. Now at the end of the gimbal, there's a little cable connector. Make sure you unattach that, but be sure not to damage anything. So do this with 2 hands and make sure to take extra care when doing this. So then just put in the new gimbal in there and connect it where you unconnected it right there with those cables. You just put it back in. Then you put that silver metal piece, that plate down, and screw it in with the 2 screws. You can see we're going backwards now. So you're gonna tighten the 4 screws so the gimbal's in there nice and tight. And then you're gonna put on the front piece and tighten those screws. Now you're gonna wanna put on the shell and screw that in, both sides, left and right sides, as we did before. And then you're also gonna wanna put in that front piece and screw in those screws, those 4 screws as well. So on your quad, you have 4 different landing gears right here. So if you want to change your landing gear, you're going to have to go down there, take your hex key, and just unscrew those 2 screws. So you want to take the main plastic part out first. And then when you look inside, you're gonna see these 2 little cables connected to the panel. So you wanna disconnect the 2 cables to the panel very, very carefully. And then you wanna take the new panel and connect that. Then you're gonna wanna put in that new plastic piece, the new landing gear, and tighten the screws. So basically here what you're doing is you're not only replacing the landing gear, but that little panel is for the LED lights. So usually if you crash, you might damage both of these. So you wanna make sure your lights are working and the landing gear is also working. All right, one item that might help your drone from becoming damaged as easily is these arm bracers, which give it a lot more stability and support. Now to install these arm bracers, you're gonna need your hex key again. So they just kind of snap in on both sides. You just line them up and put them in. You start with your drone upside down and then flip your drone right side up. And then you put these little buckles on the side right here. and you have to make sure that the hole for the screw is lined up when you put in the buckle. Now turn the drone upside down, and then you're going to want to tighten the screw right here. Take the other bracer marked with the letter R and repeat these steps. Now another way to keep your drone safe is to attach a propeller guard. So the propeller guard is sold separately. So you'll see the propeller guard very discreetly labeled LF and LB. So you're going to want to take an LF and an LB, and then you're going to want to attach them together like this. Then you just line up the guard with the drone, and you put the drone in there, and then you just snap it on, and you're good to go. All right, now you're all set up and ready to go. You can always rewatch this video, go to certain parts when you forget them in order to help you out, whether it's setup, flying, repairs, or replacements. Now, if you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up and share it with a friend if you think it will be helpful for them. And before you go, links to the DJI FPV drone, all the accessories are in the description below. And I just recently updated my free drone gear guide, which gives you my recommendation for all different drones of all different budgets, as well as accessories, software, and other tools to make you a better drone pilot. You can download that free guide by clicking right up there or in the link below. I'm Brick Aramella, the Drone Pilot Pro, and remember, fly like a pro.